Hello everyone and welcome to Hobby Starter. My name is Mark Smith and for the next 3/4 of an hour I'm here to talk to you through the art of Kumihimo braiding. Now there are two fundamental sections in Kumihimo braiding. There's the braid, which you can see here, and this is what I'm going to be talking to you and showing you how to create today. And then in a later Hobby Starter show, I'm going to be showing you how we add beads to completely transform your braids into pieces of jewellery. So I'm really excited to show you this. It's one of my favourite techniques and it's very simple. You need a minimum of tools, a minimum of threads and cords, and it's a really nice way of interacting with your children because it's very repetitive. You need a minimum of tools and it's a really nice fundamental way for children to get involved in jewellery. So in front of me I have the toolkit in effect. So your basic fundamentals, you need your Kumihimo disc. Now we're going to be making tubular braids, so you would use a round disc. We can also make flat wristwatch braids, which you would use a square disc for. But in this tutorial I'm going to talk to you all about the round disc. Now it comes in two sizes. This is your basic, which we're going to be using today, and this is a little mini travel. Now, as you probably noticed, the big difference is the size, but the hole down the centre, which our tubular braiding will actually form, is exactly the same size. Okay, so we've got our, now this is made out of a memory foam, very similar to your macrame boards, and we'll talk greatly when we come to do the proper demonstration all about the numbers and the compass points, etc. on the discs. So that's your really important. Then you'll need some bobbins, ideally 8, because we're going to be doing an 8 warp braid today. And as I said, when we come to do the demonstration, I'll talk you through how the bobbins work and what they're needed for. So you'll need 8 of your cord bobbins. Then you will need a weight. Now we're working in two sizes. We have a 100-gram weight, which is the largest. And as you can see, it's got a little crocodile clip on the top. The one I'm going to be working with today is a 50-gram weight, which is a lighter weight, half the size. And as you can see, we've got a little crocodile clip on the top. Then on top of that, we're going to need finishings. So I have got in front of me here, we've got Kumihimo bell caps in various sizes and colours. Then we have homemade bell caps, which I'm going to be including in the demonstration today. And then we need a selection of clasps. So we've got toggle clasps here, we've got lobster claws, we've got bolt ring clasps. So your basic jewellery making closures. Because we're going to be making our own clasps, our own endings, you will need wire. Now I'm going to be using today 0.8mm gauge of your wire. And again, you can use any colour you like. Okay, so this is your 0.8. Then for finishing, you're going to need either some wildfire thread or fireline. So this is seed beading thread. It's absolutely perfect, and because it's so fine, it will disappear in your work at the end. So you'll need either some very, very, very fine beading thread, or you will need some glue. Now, you can either use your hypo cement, and this is absolutely perfect. This is a jewellery making glue, and it has a very, very fine nozzle, which is perfect for your jewellery making. Most of you who have seen me on JewelleryMaker know that I'm one of the most impatient people on the planet and very busy, so I use the glue that's super. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be using on the demonstration today, but either or. If you've got time to let your epoxy cement dry over 24 hours, perfect. If you're like me, very busy, then you need a quick fix, then the glue that's super. Otherwise, you're all going to need is a sharp pair of scissors. And this is fundamentally all you're going to need to do your Kumihimo braiding. So as well as all the tools of the trade, you're also going to need some cords. And the cords I have on my left here. Okay, so as you can see, very much similar to macrame, which we featured on a previous Hobby Starter show. What I've got in front of me here are all the cords and braids that I've used over the years for my Kumihimo designs. So my go-to is the S-long cord, which I'm going to be demonstrating on the show with today. Now these come in various gauges. This is a 0.9, which I'm going to be using today, and there's also a 0.5, a 0.4 and a 0.3, determining how fine you want your braiding to be. So that's your S-long cord. Next we have nylon cord, and this comes in again many gauges and many widths. So we've got them in these little, these are 5.5 millimeters, and then these are your 0.4 millimeters. And again, nylon cord is a really nice, and these are huge reels. These are 200-meter reels, so they will go a long way in your braiding. Then we've got, if we want to go to that sort of next level, we have your satin cord, and this is 1 millimeter in gauge, and again that comes in all different colors. This is your satin. Then we have your wax cord. Now wax cord is really good if you're doing lots of Kumihimo braiding and you're doing knotting at the ends, because this tends to hold itself, because it's got a wax coating. It's really good for holding to itself. And then last but not least, we have this here. This is silk cord. So if you want, again, you want that height of luxury in your Kumihimo braids, or something slightly softer or a bit more elegant. You can see the sheen, it's just absolutely beautiful. This is your silk cord. But as I've mentioned, today on the demonstration, I'm going to be using the S-long cord, and I'm going to be using 2 colors in 0.9 millimeters. Okay, so we've gone through the tools of the trade, we've gone through the cords. What is Kumihimo? So Kumihimo is a form of braiding that originated in Japan over 1300 years ago. So it's installed in the psyche of the Japanese, and it's been taken over the world. So you're probably wondering why you're looking at the back of the pieces. In this tutorial today, we're going to be going through the basics of how to make the cords. If I bring this one across here, you can see. So today we're going to be concentrating on how to make the braids, and then keep your eyes peeled, because we're going to be featuring a hobby starter show all about adding the height of luxury to your braids by incorporating your beading. So if I bring these 2 across here, you can see just by adding some glass seed beads or some bicones, it completely transforms your look. So in this tutorial, we're going to be going over the basics of how to do your braiding, and then in the later tutorial, we're going to be adding gemstones and seed beads just to elevate your designs. So it was originated all those years ago for attaching plates of armor to samurai armor suits. So it's been around a very long time, and more up to date, it's used as a fashion accessory, especially on the belt forms on kimonos and traditional dress. And as you can see, it makes the most beautiful, beautiful jewellery, and it's one of my all-time favourite techniques. So we've gone through the tools of the trade, we've gone through the threads and cords, I've told you all about Kumihimo, so I think it's about time I showed you how we get started. So I'm going to show you first of all how we're going to set up our disc with our cord, and then I'm going to show you through the basics of Kumihimo, and I promise you I can teach you how to do this in 5 minutes. It's that simple. So what I've got in front of me, as we've discussed in the introduction, is I've got my large Kumihimo round disc, and you'll notice straight away we've got the JewelleryMaker logo, we've got 32 slots around the outside of the disc, and we have 4 compass points, north, south, east and west. So this is really important for when we attach our cords to our disc. Now in today's demonstration, I'm going to be using 8 cords. As you can see, we can go up to, if we wanted to, 32 different cords. And even if you use 32 cords, you'll still have enough space through the center hole here. Now, the most I've ever used is 12. I've not ventured past the 12, but the 8 is the go-to. It's the one that most people make. So in my bag here, I have everything that we discussed in the introduction. So it's really good actually to keep everything together in a Kumihimo kit. So we've got our 8 bobbins. So I've round some of them. I'm just going to show you how we wind up the bobbins here. So you're probably going to ask, what length of cord do you need for your necklaces or your bracelets? Now there are many different rules of thumb, but the one I use, and I've always used over probably 10 years now, I've been doing Kumihimo, is take a piece of cord, wrap it around your wrist once, and whatever measurement that is, cut a piece of cord at least 6 times the length. And then you're assured that because we come to do the finishing at the start and at the end, you will need to cut a piece of your Kumihimo braid off to attach your clasp. So bear that in mind. So rule of thumb, whatever the wrist size is or the neck size, 6 times the amount of cord. I always tend to cut 6 foot length, which is a wingspan of cord, and that covers all occasions. So you should, out of 6 foot, be able to get at least 2 bracelets, maybe a bracelet and a necklace as well. Okay, so we've got our bobbins. I'm going to pop open the bobbin, like so. And it reminds me of those little toys you had as a child, where that were on springs, where you pushed it down and it popped up again. It reminds me of those as a child. So I've got my cords, and I'm going to be using 2 colours, as I mentioned, a navy blue and a dark olive green. So I'm going to cut my lengths of cord. So I've got my green, and I want 4 pieces of the olive green and 4 pieces of the navy blue. Let's find the end. There we go. So 4 pieces of the navy blue and 4 pieces of the sage green. So there are different ways of attaching your cords. Because we're going to be using a thicker gauge, this is the way that we're going to attach our bobbin. So I've opened my bobbin. I'm going to take one end of my cord, take it around the bobbin, and simply tie a single knot, followed by another single knot. And then you notice we've got a little tail here. I'm going to cut off the tail, and then holding the curved side in my left thumb and finger, I'm simply going to wrap. And if you can, try to wrap the cord around the little tail that you've got there. So we're simply going to wrap all the way around. Hence the children's nursery rhyme, wind the bobbin up. Okay, so we're going to close that shut and just leave a tail of about 6 inches. Now the other way you can attach your cords, if you're using a fine delicate cord like a 0.4 or a 0.5 millimeter cord, what you would do is you would fold your cord in half, go round the bobbin, and then take the 2 long tails through the little loop you've made and pull tight, and then you would wrap again. Okay, so you've got 2 widths. Okay, so that's another way. Now I would only do that if you're using a finer cord, but because we're using a 0.9, I'm going to go ahead and go the traditional way. So I've got my cord, I'm going to wrap it once around the bobbin, twice, just 2 little single knots, that's all you need. Not too tight, because you'll need to cut this off when you come to the end of your design. And we're simply going to, again, wind up. Okay, so it's simple winding up your bobbins. Okay, so I've now got 8 bobbins, and the reason I've gone for 4 of each colour is I want to perform a spiral pattern in my braiding. If you wanted one colour, you would just use one colour. If you wanted multiple colours, it's just all about experimentation and deciding on how many bobbins of which colour and the positioning, etc. But I'm going to go for a simple spiral today, which is the design that most people use, and it's one that I use more than any other. So I've got 4 bobbins using my olive green, and I've got 4 of my navy blue. So as I said, leave a tail. Let's have a look. I've done one too many of the olive green here. So what you would do is you would unravel your bobbin, cut off your cord, put that to one side, and then take your blue cord and rethread. So it's very simple to start and finish. So we just cut that off. It's difficult to imagine how many bobbins I've actually threaded up over the years. It must be into the thousands, I would imagine. So we're going in, we're cutting our little tail off, and then we're going to wind up the bobbin. So I've got 4 blue and 4 of the olive green. So as you can see, it's a minimum of tools to get going, a minimum of equipment, and you're all ready to go. Okay, so we've got 4 blue and we've got 4 of the sage green. So next what we're going to do is we're going to pick them all up at the end of the cords. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. So we're just going to lift these up, making sure they're all attached like so. I always find that the bobbins make a lovely sound when you're using it as well. It sounds like rain on a window. So we're just going to pull our bundles like so. So you need a tail of about 6 to 8 inches. And all we're going to do then is we're going to, using those gathered cords, we're going to tie them all in a single knot. and pull those through. Okay, so now we have our 8 cords all gathered together with a simple knot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick up our weight that we spoke about in the introduction. And from the end that has the little tails, I'm going to open up my little crocodile clip and I'm going to attach it to the knot. So the weight end and the little tails are in the same direction. And I'm going to bring in my disc. So I'm going to place the weight from the top down through the hole in the centre. Now, because we want a spiral pattern, the positioning of the cords is quite important. So as I mentioned, we've got a north and south, and we've got an east and west. So you need to choose. I'm going to have the blues at north and south, and I'm going to have the sage greens, the olive greens, at east and west. So I'm just going to manipulate the cords so they come across. So, and you want one either side of the compass point. So 1, 2 either side of west, and then we're going to just attach them around. There we go, perfect. And then the 2 blue, 1 either side of south and 1 either side of north. Okay, so you've got blue, north and south, and olive, east and west. And that is your disc set up. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there are 32 slots, so you can have 32 cords for more elaborate braids. But for this demonstration, we're going to concentrate on the 8 warp, which is the design that I use more than any. Okay, so we're about to start Kumihimoing. So we've now got our disc. Now I'm right-handed, so I hold the disc in my left hand. Okay, it may be different depending on which hand you use. This is the pattern. We've got a cord to the left of south and a cord to the right. We're going to start with the left side. So I'm going to pick up the cord and I'm going to go across the board and go to the left of the 2 cords that are already there. So now I have 3 cords at the top, at north, and 1 cord at the south. We can't have 1 cord and 3 cords, we have to then make two sets of 2. So we picked up bottom left, across to top left, top right, across to bottom right. So you're staying on the same side, but you're going the other side of the disc. Okay, so bottom left to top left, top right to bottom right. We're going to turn our disc now 90 degrees, and I turn anti-clockwise. So I'm going to go 90 degrees. I'm going to repeat that combination. So bottom left, across to top left, top right, across to bottom right. And you can see that the slots hold the cords really nice and tightly. Turn our disc 90 degrees. Bottom left, top right, bottom right. Turn the disc. And you can already see, because we're moving the cords, they're moving away from the compass points. Okay, so if you look at it and you think, oh, it's not on north or south anymore, don't worry, because the cords are going to turn like a windmill. Again, bottom left, top right, bottom right, turn the disc. Bottom left, bottom right, top right, bottom right. So you can get that hang of it. Now, if you mistakenly turn in the other direction, all you're going to do is unravel the work that you did previously. It's all about concentrating, but you get into a muscle memory and it takes over, and it's very, very simple. So you can get quite a bit of speed up. Okay, so just remember to turn in the right direction. So bottom left, top right, bottom right. Turn the disc 90 degrees. Top, bottom, 90 degrees. And all you're going to do is you're going to continue with this combination until you get to the desired length of your bracelet or necklace. But just bear in mind you'll need an inch either end spare to do your finishing work. So we'll just do a few more. Now there's nothing worse than losing your place. So a little top tip that you might find useful is if the postman knocks on the door or the telephone rings or you need to leave your work, leave it like this. Bottom left to top left, then you can put your disc down. So when you come back to it, you'll know exactly where your next move is. So we've got 3 at the top. We never have 3, we always have 2. we've got one at the bottom, so we know that it's going to be top right across, and they are ready to go again. So bottom left, top right, bottom right, turn the disc. Turn. So you can see how quickly you get into a rhythm. So we're just going to, I'll do a few more moves and then I'll show you how quickly the spiral has built up already. And obviously I'm using a thicker gauge cord here. If you were using a finer cord, it would take longer to produce the length of cord, the braid that you need. So just bear that in mind. I would definitely recommend, if you're a beginner to Kumihimoing, use a thicker cord, because if you go straight into using a fine cord that takes hours and hours and hours to get a necklace length, it might put you off the hobby altogether, and we would hate that to happen. So always go for a thicker cord and have a quick make, and then that'll give you the impetus and the passion to continue with your Kumihimoing. So we're just going to continue all the way around. I'll get back up to north again, shall I? And then we'll have a quick look at our braid. What's really nice about this is because you don't need any tools, you can pre-cut your cord, you can load up your bobbins, and you can pop it on the disc, and you can take it anywhere. You can take it on an aeroplane, you can take it on a train, you can do it at the back seat of the car, on a coach journey, and it'll while away the hours, and you'll have a piece of braid at the end to turn into amazing jewellery. So if I just turn the disc, this is a good place to stop. So I'm going to make sure I have 3 cords at the top just to turn out. So I'm going to turn over, and you can see already, look, we've got the spiral braid starting to form. So it's a very quick make. Okay, so we'll continue with this, as I said, until you get to the length of your bracelet. Now, on my left, I have a piece of Kumihimo that I've already made. So I'm going to leave that in 3 and 1. I can continue with this later. So I'm going to pop that to one side. So here on my desk, I have, as you can see, look, we have this, you can definitely see the spiral now. Okay, so you've got the sage green and the navy blue. So you've got that spiral pattern, and that's determined by the positioning of your original cords on the disc. Okay, so I've got a 7-inch piece of braid here. So that's 6 inches for the bracelet, and then as I said, we need to cut the ends off when we come to do our finishing off. So what we do is the following. So I've got my braid, I've got my cords in the right position. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay my work flat on my desk. So we've now got 4 sets of our cords. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start on the left side. So I'm going to pull my bobbin ever so slightly. So I have a tail of about 6 inches. And then I'm going to choose the cord that's diagonally opposite, and I'm going to repeat the same. So I'm going to cut the cord. I'm going to take the 2 ends, and I'm going to tie a single knot followed by another single knot. Okay, and then so that's done. Then I'm going to turn my disc, and I'm going to repeat it with the blue. So I'm going to take the top left first of all. So I'm going to cut the bobbin diagonally across to the bottom right. There are quite a few different ways of finishing off, but I found, for me, this is probably the easiest and the most effective. So that's why I'm going to be demonstrating it for you today. So that's 1 knot and a 2nd knot. So that's half the cords done. So we've got it. So when you're finishing off like this, you don't have to do the 90 degrees, but as long as you remember the diagonal cuttings. So this is the 3rd set of 2. And we're going to go diagonally across. So 1 and 2. So we've got 1 set left. So we're going to cut the bobbins, and then we're going to go in and we're going to tie our single knot followed by a double knot. Pull that nice and tight. So now we're going to pull that away from the disc and we're left with our braid. That probably took me from start to finish about an hour, so it's quite a quick make. Now, not all cords are going to do this, but what I love about S-long cord is this. You watch. Because it's made out of nylon, it's got a slight amount of give to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull ever so slowly and it stretches. Okay, so if you'll probably get another inch, inch and a half out of a 7-inch braid if you pull. It just stretches ever so slightly, and you can see it straightened it out as well. Okay, amazing. So I'm going to take off my crocodile clip and we're ready to finish. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you one end using the cord method and one end using the glue method. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to my fireline thread. This is Wildfire, and I'm going to take a piece of thread. Only need about 12 inches, something like that. I'm going to start with the knot, the side that's got the knots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my cord underneath the braid, and I'm going to tie a simple overhand knot. Okay, so I'm going to tie my knot. And what we need to do is we need to leave a bit of space, probably about ½ centimetre. So can you see I'm tying my knot just here, and there's about ½ centimetre of braid. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that piece of thread around the braid, pulling nice and tight. Okay, and you probably want 6 or 7 tight wraps, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to tie a single knot, pulling that nice and tight, and then I'm going to go in with a double knot. So 1 and 2 over the top, and then I'm going to flip my work over and I'm going to tie, I think they call it a surgeon's knot. So that's 1 and 2, and then pull that nice and tight. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut my threads. And don't worry about the thread showing, because we're actually going to be covering it with the ending. Okay, so that's one way of securing. And then the other end, this is where we go to my glue. So I'm going to go for the glue that's super. And this, as I said, this is what the technique that I tend to use more than any other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to put just a tiny, tiny little blob of glue Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it around the braid. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to drop it around the braid, again leaving a couple of millimeters at the end. Okay, so we're just going to let that go off. And as I said, that will go off in a couple of seconds. Okay, just roll the excess off. And what happens is the glue now will permeate through the braid and it'll bond all of the fibres together. Okay. So just let that dry off. Meantime, we can go to this end of our braid, and using our pair of scissors, we're just going to cut just after the little section of thread. And as you can see, because we've bound the braid, it's all staying together. If we didn't have that braid there, it would all unravel and your piece of work would be lost. So that's at one end. And then with the piece that we glued a moment ago, we're just going to go in, and again, we're going to cut at the end, like so. And again, as you can see, we've got the glue has permeated through the braid and all the fibres are now bonded together. Okay, so we mentioned earlier in the introduction, there are a couple of ways of finishing. So the first technique is using the bell caps. The bell caps are beautiful bring these selection across. I'll show you the different sizes. So they come in all different types of metal colour. They have the little domes, reminds me of little tea cozies, or you can get quite modern, contemporary looking cylinder shapes as well. So you would look for a tassel end that fits your braid. So let's go with this size here. Let's have a look. Perfect, look. It's absolutely perfect. So what we do is we go back to our glue and we go in, and all we need to do is just put one tiny little blob of glue in the bell cap. That's all we need, just one little tiny. And then what you need to do, if you can, is just ruffle up the edges of your, well, I call them little tufts at the end of your braid. I'm going to pop that into the bell cap, give it a little twist, just a couple of turns, and then flip it up vertically. So all the glue is now going to permeate down through the braid and hold itself nice and firm. Okay, so we let that set for a couple of seconds. And the next section is I'm going to show you how to make our own bell caps. Because sometimes if you're doing a braid and it's slightly thinner and thicker, or you don't have an available bell cap, you will need to make your own. So that's going to be the next step. So what we're going to need is a tool called a 6-step bail making plier. Now this is available on the JewelleryMaker website, so if you put this, it's invaluable if you want to make your own endings. So as you can see, because it's called a 6-step bail maker, we've got 6 sizes of mandrel, going from 3mm right up to 10mm, so it caters for all different sizes. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you will need a wire in a 0.8mm gauge, and that gives you enough strength and also gives you the fluidity to make your endings. So we need to cut a piece of wire, probably about 8 inches in length, and I'm using flush cutters, which again are available on the JewelleryMaker website. And what we're going to do is, again, I'm right-handed, so I hold the tool in my left hand. Now can you see we've got a gap in between the mandrels there? First of all, we need to decide on the thickness of our cord ending. Now I think it's probably going to be number 4 of the 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold a short end of the wire across the gap, holding it with my thumb, and then I'm going to wrap 7 or 8 times around the mandrel, keeping it nice and tight. And if you find that you've done this and it's too big, then you've not wasted very much, only a couple of inches of wire. Okay, so I'm going to pull that nice and tight. So I'm going to take that off, and as you can see, we've got a really nice coil. Now we have 2 tails here. I'm going to cut the long tail off, and I'm going to cut that as close to the coil as I can. Just give that a nice little cut. Now you can see how perfect the flush cutters cut. So again, definitely worth having those in your toolkit. So we have our coil and we have a shorter tail. So what I'm going to do with the shorter tail is, from the center of the coil, I'm going to work out about 1 centimeter from the end. So you have a very short little tail. I'm going to cut that off. So you can see it's about 1 centimeter of wire from the coil. Then I'm going to use a pair of round nose pliers. Now JewelleryMaker has a toolkit that have all of these tools on, or you can buy individual tools separately if you have these already in your tool stash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called an eye-pin loop. So I have my little tail, I'm going to pop in my pliers, and I'm slowly going to curl that little tail back so it meets the coil. So as you can see, it's like a little bin with a lid. Can you see at the top there? So holding onto the coil, I'm going to use a pair of flat nose pliers. So I'm using all of the tools from the toolkit. I'm going to hold that little loop in the pliers, and I'm just going to bring into the center of the coil. So if I show you where its position is, can you see now it's in the center, ready to go? Okay, so can you see that? Perfect. So now we've got our coil ending, So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to offer this up to the braid. So I'm going to pop the braid in. Okay, so that's, can you see it's just poking out of the top by that little loop at the top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the coil round. Can you see where the coil ends? Okay, so can you see where the coil ends? There we go. Okay, what I'm going to do is, using my flat nose pliers, is I'm going to go in and I'm going to squidge that last little coil into the braid. So I'm just going to open my pliers and I'm going to squidge nice and tight so it sits on top of my braid. Now, as you can see, I would have probably gone for a smaller coil for this one. In fact, why don't I do it? I'll show you how we do it. So again, I've got my pliers, I've got my wire, again about 8 inches. So we used number 4 the last time, so I'm going to go a size smaller, which will be number 3, holding on to the short piece, and then I'm going to wrap the wire nice and tightly around the mandrel. Again, 5, 6, 7 times, so you get your nice neat coil around your plier. We've got 2 wires. I'm going to dispose of the longer, and then the shorter, you can see there, I'm going to cut, leaving a centimetre. I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to make the eye-pin loop. So I'm just going to coil that back. So you can see I've got that little loop at the end. I'm going to take my flat nose pliers, I'm going to hold it nice and tight within the jaws and pull it into the centre. So you can see now that it's nicely in the centre of our coil. Then I'm going to take my braid. Perfect, that's much better, look. So that is nicely in position. We can just see the little tufts at the end. And then I'm going to go in, and where the coil ends, I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to fold it into the braid. So give it a nice squeeze, nice and tight. It's nicely locked and it's nice and secure. Okay, and if you want to, you can add a tiny little dab of glue just to give you some security, especially if you're going to be selling on your jewellery afterwards. You want that little bit of security. But that's your little end clasp here. Then you've got your bell cap, which is fully secure and ready to go. And then all you would need to do then is, using a jump ring, I've got some jump rings here. Let's go for this amazing metal clasp here. This is a sterling silver clasp, which already has a jump ring attached. We'll take that off and then we'll go to our end. So using the jump ring, we'll pop it on the loop at the end. We'll pop on our clasp ending, like so. All available on our website, all of the jump rings and various clasps. So that's one end attached to your coil, and then all you would do then is you would repeat it the other end. Let's do that. So we'll take one of our jump rings and then we'll feed that through the end of our bell cap. So you can see that goes on quite simply. That is nice and secure now, that bell cap. We're going to pop on the second half of our clasp. We're going to close that nice and securely in position. So now we have our Kumihimo braid. We have our clasp of choice. We'll thread that on and we have a Kumihimo braid bracelet. So always have a little experiment about your thicknesses of your braids, your thicknesses of your cords. What's really nice as well is if you use a 0.4mm north and south and a 0.9mm east and west, not only do you get a spiral, but you get a really nice textured spiral going through the cords as well. And have an experiment with different clasp sizes and finishes. And as I said, all of our clasps are available on our JewelleryMaker website. There's a whole selection, dedicated channel as well. You can watch on Sky 674, Freeview 72. If you see the QR code that's on the screen now, that'll sign you up to our newsletter and you get all the information that you're going to need using that little QR code. We've got a Facebook page. All of us guest designers also, we have a Facebook page, and on screen now you will see the Hobby Starter Facebook page. Join that. I'm on that, so you can always pop along and have a look and contact me if you need any other help. Thank you for watching, and as I said, keep your eyes peeled on the Hobby Starter channel, because step 2, adding the beads to the Kumihimo braids, will be coming up very soon. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I very much look forward to seeing you again soon.